Final team in the Northwest, the ever implosive Utah Jazz. Their most key free agents are Eric Paschall and then Hassan Whiteside. They don't have bird rights on Hassan Whiteside. Juan Hernangomez is a $7.5 million non-guarantee. I guess they declined that, but if you're looking for sort of a human trade exception, yada, yada, yada. They have a Joe Ingles trade exception worth $9.8 million. It expires in February 9th, so they can hold on to it. They have a ton of, I don't know, they have a ton of defensive priorities. I think they just need athletic defense is what this team needs, specifically at the 3 and the 4. But there are just so many other questions looming over this is, are they starting over? Are they trading Gobert? Is Donovan Mitchell a trade request risk? And those questions are going to inform their free agency targets. And my gut feeling is, though, because of their proximity to ducking the tax, they're going to be more so in the minimum contract range. And so I considered, and if not, their best betting tool is going to be the mini MLE. Someone like Juan Toscano-Anderson makes a lot of sense for them. I don't know what his market's going to be, but Golden State didn't really have him in the rotation. And so he could be available for the minimum, even though he's a restricted free agent. But the question I wanted to start you off with, and maybe that will inform who target you have for them. How many of Conley, Clarkson, Royce O'Neal, and Bogdanovich are back in Utah next season? Let me throw Gobert into that player pool as well. I'm going to set the over-under at 1.5.
Okay, I'll go over, but like not comfortably. I think I kind of think they're going to move Gobert. I'm almost surprised it didn't happen on draft night. Just because I don't know if that's the right decision, because I think Mitchell, overrated is a shitty thing to say, but like, I think at least with Gobert, you're like guaranteed that the theory of building a team is pretty easy. I think Mitchell, he's a notch below now. I think the Booker Tatum level that like there was a discussion about before. So anyway, I'm digressing on myself here. I think they should look into moving everybody, but like you said, the at the outset of this, like this is one of the toughest free agent teams to talk about because they could look like just wildly different in terms of their personnel and their financial outlook and like everything else. Their timeline could change depending on what they do with Mitchell and or Gobert. I guess the most likely guys to be back are probably, say, Conley, because I don't know what the market is going to be for him.
He has that huge guarantee on the back end of this deal, so you can't even treat him as an expiring contract. I think he's guaranteed $14.3 million of his $24.4 million in 2023, 2024, and he's making 22.7 next year, which isn't chump change. Yeah.
And so, but then like someone like Clarkson, I think is movable. O'Neal definitely movable. Like how many times would we have mentioned Royce O'Neal in our, like this team needs a wing that can be a competent role player and make threes. And
I know he had a down year last year, but if they ran him through the gauntlet these past few years, if he had just like any sort of help, we're probably back to gushing about how good Royce O'Neal is.
Right. Well, like I don't have it in front of me, but if like, I'm sure his matchup difficulty is, got to be the highest on the Jazz by a lot. And then, one of the handful of highest figures in the league, just because by default he was guarding, whether the guy was like a 2 or 3 or even a 4, like he just guarded the best other players overtaxed. So, they have guys that are palatable. I think Bogdanovich should be in demand as a trade piece, like on an expiring deal. If you're a team that just is willing to kind of deal with the defensive limitations and you want just a dead eye shooter that can make a play. I mean, so yeah, their free agency is just like, I have no idea right now, just because I don't know what this roster is going to look like. I think, again, it's probably minimums. I do think you're right about the tax issue. So, you're just looking for athletic wings that can defend and shoot, which is like what everyone's looking for. But this team needs specifically, especially on the off chance they keep the core together, right? Like, because then your needs very clearly, because they've been the same for the last 2 or 3 times they've gotten bounced from the playoffs before they wanted to.
Would you, and I like even TJ Warren, he would have to go for the minimum, I think, for them to take a look. I'm just like, there are many MLE guys that might make sense for them. Otto Porter would make sense for them. I don't know why, if the money's equal, he's leaving GSW for Utah, but that's the other situation. And Utah's a really good team. They can be thermonuclear on offense. Gobert is a top 10 defense unto himself. If the money's equal, which it will be for a lot of these guys, there's so much unrest in Utah. Why would you go there right now?
Well, and like if they do, there will be, I mean, the unrest might be alleviated if they split up Mitchell and Gobert, but if they don't, and we're just looking at these wings, it's also like, well, where are my minutes going to be? Because if they don't move, Conley, Bogdanovich, O'Neal, Clarkson, like you're signing a guy that's like, what am I, the eighth, ninth guy on this team? So, then if the money's equal, it gets even sketchier because you're adding maybe a lack of playing time and, the chance to improve your future earning potential, assuming we're talking about minimums. You're adding that to like, what's this team going to look like at the deadline if things go sideways? Like there's just there's a lot of variables. It's in theory, because of how good the roster is, this should be like a pretty palatable destination. Not that Utah has always been great with free agency, but I think all the external factors and all the uncertainties make it like really tricky. Like if you're Daniel House, do you he would have a role there for sure because he did last year. Do you want to go back there, or do you want to sign with, you name it, for the mid level someplace? I don't know.
If they were actually looking to address their real needs, this would be to say that they would go to the trade market.
Yeah.
Based on what we're talking about. And names that's I proposed this when we did the Pacific. Would you do Jordan Clarkson for Marcus Morris if you're the Jazz?
I think I probably would, just because suddenly you have a small ball center option, which, I don't know if that was always the issue. I think it got overblown as the issue, but at least on the off chance you want to take Gobert off the floor, I guess that's what you could do. And then Clarkson is just strictly a scorer. And I think if you have Mitchell and you retain some of the other offensive talent, like this offense is great. Like it doesn't need Jordan Clarkson to come in and, kill backups, because you're not playing Clarkson at the end of important games anyway.
No. And look, if you're worried because you're taking on money in that deal, which I don't fucking care about, but you could include it could be Rudy Gay and Jordan Clarkson for Marcus Morris. And look, if you're LA, kind of looking at Rudy Gay as, we could probably use him not in the Marcus Morris senior role, but if we want like a slower look with him up front, like you could go that route as well. So I actually liked that framework. The other thing, this wasn't on the table until there was the report that the Knicks are looking to dump him to continue clearing out cap space for Jalen Brunson. You can fit Cam Reddish into the Joe Ingles trade exception. And there's like real defensive pep to the way he plays at points. I don't know. It would be optically fucking stupid of the Knicks to give up a first round pick for Cam Reddish, only to not use him, then start to use him, see him get injured, and then salary dump him to go after Jalen Brunson. That being said, maybe you're throwing them you're not throwing them a first round pick, but if you're willing to take on the money, he fits into your trade exception. And I actually think, do I think he's closing the end of important games? No. He gives Royce O'Neal a huge break. Just looking at, he can go defend 1 through 3. And I think there's kind of like the upside there too, where it's like, he's still young and he could be anything on offense, even though he probably won't be.
No, I think that makes sense. I mean, the Knicks just did basically that by salary dumping Kemba Walker and attaching draft assets as a contract you guys signed, I guess, sorry. So they're open to it. We know that.
Yeah, so like those are the names. I don't know if any other trade targets sprung to mind for you. I tried to figure out a way to get them Jonathan Isaac at one point. That proved very difficult. The Magic would have to hate Jonathan Isaac's contract, which I guess is, I suppose it's possible. But yeah, I wonder if they could even get Markelle Fultz from Orlando, like just play him next to Donovan Mitchell, or even go super small and play him next to, you'd be going super small anyway if O'Neal is part of that. Harrison Barnes would be great for them. If you're Sacktown, the way that they prioritize John Collins in a Harrison Barnes trade, do they view Bojan Bogdanovic in the same vein? He is the better offensive player, but like John Collins is younger and just, I think, better, or at least more intriguing all around. The other name, if you're playing him at the 4, I mean, you have issues, but Josh Richardson, is that someone that you can get here, and what is it costing to get him? Because you have the different various levels of salary matching. I'm not giving up Bojan Bogdanovic for him. I don't think the Spurs want Conley. Would they want Clarkson? I would give up. It's not, look, Jordan Clarkson's been really good for the Jazz. What he provides, though, I just don't think is super important to them at the moment. I would give him up for it. Or you could step ladder. I'm not giving up Royce O'Neal for Josh Richardson, but you could step ladder your way there with they have Naw right now and then Rudy Gay, let's say. Like that's a package that you could flesh out from there to get Josh Richardson.
It seems like, this isn't the subject of this pod, but like it seems like the way to address a lot of those issues is just, if we're talking trade, like, what do you think of I know it seems like it's less likely to happen now based on recent reporting, but just Gobert to Atlanta for Capella, and you pick one like Collins or Hunter. You could get worse with, you use Herter and like lesser players, but it seems like you could kind of sort things out with a Gobert to Atlanta trade. And I know like both fan bases kind of hate that, or at least the some of the ones that have been kind of posited as possible. But do you do that? Like if Atlanta says, hey, we'll take them, we'll give you Capella, we'll give you Collins, you can, if it's going to be a sticking point, you can even have Herter. Like, do you just do it?
No. If unless you're going to reroute one of Collins or Capella elsewhere, I would probably do it if push came to shove if I'm the Hawks. If I was the Jazz, I'd be more, can you do Collins, Okongwu, and Hunter type framework? And I might even be more inclined to do Collins and Okongwu and then maybe Kevin Herter. And if I was the Hawks, like those are still parameters I'd be thinking about, but Capella still has to be moved because you're not having Capella and Rudy Gobert. I don't know that for what the Hawks themselves have, I don't know if they're going to give you enough defensive juice in return to prop up your roster. Like, yeah, I guess you replace Rudy Gobert with Capella. It's like if it's Capella and Hunter and Okongwu, I just don't, it doesn't wow me if I'm Utah. And if you make that move, to me, it's more about we're looking for flexibility moving forward to have these more digestible contracts that we could deal. And we don't think Rudy Gobert with 4 years and 170-ish left provides us with that.
Yeah, I'm not interested in Collins if I'm Utah, just to answer my own question. I think I need to get Hunter, and I would really push hard for Okongwu. And you, like Hawks, you figure out what to do with Capella. But then you've got a money matching issue. You kind of almost need Capella or Collins.
And then you're kind of rebuilding. Is where, like, I know you could still be okay, but I think there's this belief that the Jazz could move Rudy Gobert and not get measurably worse.
That's tough.
They're going to get a lot worse. And so you have to consider, okay, what is that? We still have Bojan Bogdanovic and Mike Conley and Royce O'Neal and Jordan Clarkson in that scenario. Maybe they're deeper. Maybe their lineup packages are more versatile. Are they anywhere near as good as they were last season? And the answer is no.
No. And I mean, like, look, this same roster basically 2 years ago was the best team in the league by a ton. Like their net rating was like plus, I can't even remember now, but it was well clear of everybody else's. Again, we're probably discounting the personal side of things again, but like, if you can make this work, I think you find a couple athletic defenders and you just run it back. But again, like we've just spent several minutes discussing, that's hard. And
that's what I would do if I was this team, is I would keep the core together for at least another year and then you can figure it out next season. Like Conley only gets easier to move at that point. If you lose Bogdanovic for nothing in free agency, it's not the end of the world. And maybe you have a better feel for what's going on at the trade deadline with this group. And it could be something, I think it needs to be more than bringing back just Daniel House. But like, go out there and make the move that maybe makes you net neutral payroll. And then you can reevaluate at the trade line or even ahead of the draft. If you need to, which you don't, no team ever needs to, but if you're staying around, I think right now I have them on my sheet. They're within $2 million of the tax. That would go up if they, brought back Juan Hernangomez or signed players or made additions. But if you're going to be within 10 million of the tax, that's something you can try and address close to the trade deadline or at the draft. I just don't think now's the time to short circuit it unless you're going to be bowled away by a Rudy Gobert offer. And even if you are, I just think you need to be prepared to rebuild, because divesting Rudy Gobert, or even if I don't think Mitchell's a risk to request a trade because they could send him wherever the hell they want at this point. I think he and his camp they're smarter than that. They know. I mean, I found the report that they were shocked by Quinn Snyder being fired, or not fired, but leaving, hysterical, because we all knew, like people who weren't even plugged in knew that Quinn Snyder was leaving. So Donovan Mitchell was not shocked by that.
Yeah. And I would suggest that he and his camp knew like a little more than we did too.
I would think maybe not though. It's totally possible. So yeah, I would keep it together and try and improve on the margins. I do for what they need. Yes, that's going to be tough to improve on the margins. This is to say, like, hey, maybe consider spending the full MLE, or is there in a way, like, can they get Kendrick Williams from OKC, who helps a ton and makes so little? I don't know what you're necessarily sending back, but I even think the name I sprung to that is, I think will be within their price range, like a Juan Toscano-Anderson and another trade target to monitor. I don't know what Washington's, we know what their plan is when they're keeping Beal, but is KCP, or I think more usefully to the Jazz, is Kuzma available there? Like, is a Kuzma for Clarkson swap at all? make sense? Do you need to attach? How much do you need to attach to Clarkson? Kuzma plays a more desirable position, but having that shot creation in Washington from Clarkson himself, I'm just spitballing here. But like if I'm the Jazz, I'm operating like this core is sticking together because I think that's the right move, at least through next season.
Yeah, I think Kelly Oubre. I mean, does Bogdanovich get you Kelly Oubre? Like, I mean, Oubre is kind of an undisciplined wild defender, but he's a great athlete, and he just changes. You know, he hits what you need to hit for that defense. I think he's just going to get out and, you know, be mobile and stuff. I think Bogdanovich is a better player, but in terms of fit, like, I don't know, you could talk me into that one.
That would be interesting. I wonder why Charlotte would want a more expensive player when it looks like they're trying to cut payroll, but maybe it's a third team gets involved where you're ending up with Kelly Oubre Jr. But yeah, I'm with you there. Jazz are one of the most fascinating teams, probably morbidly so though, leading into the offseason because of all the different permutations of outcomes that seem to be available to them.
Yeah.
Grant, this was great. Until we record the next one, are you able to tell our listeners where they can find you and all the fantastic work that you put out?
Find me here on the next one, probably. And then GT_Hughes on Twitter. And you can read what I write at Bleacher Report.
Thank you so much, as always. We'll be talking to you soon. And until next time, leave you all with the shout out to the one, the only. Well, before we get there, if you've made it this far, I need to plug this at the beginning. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast. Follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to us. Join Discord. The links to that and all our socials are in the podcast descriptions. And now, until next time, we leave you with the shout out to the one, the only, the legendary Frankie Ntilikina.